Okay. Hi, Alice. How are you today?
Good.
Great.
This talk is based pretty much on the book by Andrea Waldo, which is called Brain Training for Riders. What everybody asked about is how to handle show nerves, but it really goes a whole lot further than that. And this, if you haven't read this book, I would strongly suggest that you get it. First of all, what you need to understand is a little bit of the science of how our brains work. We have what's called a lizard brain. That enables our fight or flight mechanism, which essentially is what keeps us alive. So the lizard brain's purpose in life is to keep us from being eaten by the saber-toothed tiger. We also have a rational brain, which turns off in times of stress, but that's the part of our brain that lets us memorize our dressage test or figure out how to teach our horse to do a flying change. The lizard brain that we have, there's also a lizard brain in our horse, which means if our lizard brain says, get out of Dodge, we're being attacked by a saber-toothed tiger, our horse is likely to either react to our fear of whatever might happen, or on his own might see his own saber-toothed tiger. So there are two lizard brains involved in this thing. The problem with the lizard brain is, although its purpose in life is to keep us alive, it doesn't differentiate between physical and psychological stressors. In other words, the saber-toothed tiger is just as scary to our lizard brain as the dressage judge that we envision as a potential saber-toothed tiger. In order to deal with our lizard brain, we need to learn how to manage it. In eventing, the event riders in the start box in cross country say it's fine to have butterflies, but you need to teach them to fly in formation. So in order to teach our lizard brain to behave, we need to figure out how to handle it. The first thing you want to do is acknowledge that there is a reason for you to be afraid, but that it's okay. It helps if you give the problem an entity. In other words, your lizard brain is now, hi, Lizzie. And you need to now negotiate with your lizard brain. But first of all, it has to be what you're trying to do needs to be a rational goal for you and your horse, and it needs to be safe, and you need to be capable of it. So if you're able to say, yes, we can do that, now you need to discuss with Lizzie how you're going to handle it. So Lizzie, whose purpose in life is to keep you alive, will say, oh no, we're going to die. And when Lizzie says that, you say, well, actually, I don't think we are. We're going to be able to go in the ring and do our dressage test because we've done it before. So it should be fine. And Lizzie will then say, no, it won't, because my purpose is to keep you alive. And everything that threatens you is something that I need to attack. So you need to talk down your lizard brain until you've finished all the possibilities of how Lizzie thinks you're going to die. And you say, no, probably not. In the end of that, when you get to where Lizzie says, okay, I'm out of reasons that we're going to die, you can now say, great, now we can go do it. It doesn't mean you won't be nervous. It doesn't mean you won't have adrenaline. It does mean that you can look at it as it's okay to do that. You do, however, want to say, even once you've gone through all of those things, to give yourself an out. You probably won't use the out, but you do need to have it there. So if your horse really does get very frightened in the dressage arena, it is okay to say, I'm being excused, I can leave, it's all right. The fact that that out is there will then pacify Lizzie to a degree that you can deal with whatever happens. In order to compete successfully or to accomplish any goal that you're doing, you need to be aware of the competence. The competence comes from your awareness that you can handle things, that you acknowledge your abilities. As a woman, especially, we tend to be told to be polite. And when somebody says, oh, that was a lovely dressage test, you say, well, my horse was really nice, or your dressage test was really nice, instead of saying, thank you. We need to learn to be okay with the fact that we did something well and be proud of it, instead of trying to negate the accomplishments that we have actually done. Our brain has two different things: negative self-talk and positive self-talk. The negative self-talk is referred to as the itty bitty shitty committee. And the itty bitty shitty committee tells us that our mistakes are global and permanent, our success is specific and temporary, and due primarily to luck. Our positive self-talk says we must take responsibility for both our successes and failure, and describe our mistakes in specific terms so that we can fix them. In other words, when something happens and it doesn't work, that's okay, but you need to have a plan to fix it, instead of saying, oh, well, that's always going to happen. You need to say, well, it did happen, that's okay. How do we go about fixing it? The brain has several things that Andrea refers to as brain traps. What you do to fix these brain traps is you acknowledge that you are not the problem is the problem. In other words, I'm terrible is not your answer, it's I'm learning. You need to acknowledge when things do go well and to make a plan to address what isn't going well. You don't want to overgeneralize. In other words, I'm riding a chestnut mare and she's always going to do that because she's a chestnut mare. You need to instead describe the problem in the past tense and the solution in the present or future tense. So if you say, I've been having trouble getting Canada parts, but I now know that if I ask my horse to go into a shoulder in or a leg yield in the corner before it, and then collect him, this will probably make it better. But you have not said, I always have problems with Canada parts. You've said, this is what I'm working on and this is how I'm going to fix it. The goal is excellence, not perfection. Nobody gets 10s. You need to keep improving and acknowledge that you have made progress. What Andrea refers to this as is focused calm. This is also what's considered in the zone for most athletes. What you're doing there is you're taking the knowledge of your rational brain and the adrenaline of your lizard brain and combining them to be a competitive brain. There are also two pieces of yourself: the normal real self, which is what you are every day, and the performance self. The performance self is a higher energy level. It's not something you can stay at for very long, but it's what happens when you're in the zone in your competition mind. What you have to do when you're in this performance self is ignore everything else that's distracting you from your performance. The way that the books tells you to do it is to say, every time you drift from the goal, you think delete. It doesn't matter if that's what you think, but you need to have something that refocuses you. The focus can be achieved by having a mantra or several of them. Mantras are most useful if they're 2-beat and not negative, and they have something that start a domino effect. If you say, I must not look down, your brain does not hear the not and you look down. If you say, look up, then you have a 2-beat positive thing. If the positive mantra then starts other good things, that's even better. In other words, what you're looking for is something that puts you in the right place. Instead of going into your dressage ring saying, I need a 60% to get a qualifying score, you say, this horse needs to be forward and straight. And if you go in there saying forward, straight, you're going to do a whole lot better than saying, it's going to be terrible if I don't get a 60. It also helps to channel what you're thinking by imagining that you are a certain rider or a certain character. I'm Superman. Whatever works. It sounds stupid, but that's okay. In actual fact, when it's really weird, you're more likely to get something from it. and laugh about it, which helps in every case. When you're practicing, we're also told that you need perfect practice, which is actually not correct. In order to improve, what you need to do is make a mistake, correct it, figure out what went wrong, and then try again. You need to do what they call deep practice in the talent code. You break the goal down into chunks, slow down, analyze what went wrong, and repeat with focus on eliminating the mistakes. And then stop once it's gotten better. You don't keep going to say, well, I've done it once, I need to keep doing it. You also have to be acceptant of the tolerance of risk. In order to get better, you're going to have to do things that don't feel comfortable. You cannot wait until you feel ready to do anything, or you'd never do it. You need to stick your head out and say, well, let's try. As long as it's safe, it's worth trying. The confidence code says confidence occurs when the insidious self-perception that we aren't able is trumped by the stark reality of our achievement. And as long as it's safe, it's worth trying. Showing or any goal, you have to define what the success is for you. This will be a combination of what's called outcome and process goals. Outcome goals are the 60% you need. Process goals are what you need to get there, which means the circle needs to be more round. The Canada part needs to be at A instead of not. The goals that you set for yourself need to be a little out of your comfort zone. If it's too easy and doesn't scare you a little bit, it's probably not something that's going to challenge you enough to make you reach for it. The goals that you set need to be specific, realistic, and customized to you and your horse. At that point, you then plan your roadmap of how to get from where you are to where you want to be, but you need to understand that horses don't follow the roadmap. You're going to have to adjust multiple times to get to that goal, and that it's not going to be by luck, it's going to be because you're prepared. It also makes a big difference on the horse you have. The horse you have, first of all, needs to be safe for what you are able to do at the time, and he needs to be capable of doing what it is you want to do. The classic thing Danny Emerson says to eventing parents is you would not hand your child, who is a brand new driver, a car with no brakes and no steering. So don't do that with the horse you put them on. The other catch we have is we all love our horses, and that's wonderful. But sometimes the lovely young horse that we buy decides that the job we'd like him to do is not the job he'd like to do. At that point, you need to figure out whether he needs a different person to do the job he needs and you need a different horse, or whether maybe you'd like to try what it is he wants to do. Also, if you're around horses long enough, you'll find that at some point you will progress past your horse's abilities. That's entirely expected. Once again, as long as you are not doing anything that's unfair to the horse, you can ride him. But if it gets to the point where you're asking him to do something that he is physically or mentally not really capable of doing, then you need to back off and either ride him at the level that he's comfortable with, or find a horse that you can ride to where you want to be. The end of the book, Andrea has a list of stuff like a sort of an Irish blessing. And three of the ones that she says are, may your lizard brain learn that discomfort is not fatal. May you find a state of focused calm in the midst of your stressful moments. And may you recognize success even when it comes without a ribbon or a trophy. Thank you. I would say definitely, I would go read her book if you haven't. I've read it about 4 times now.
Excellent. Thank you, Alice. As always, excellent organization and delivery of the concepts. And at this point, I'm going to stop the recording and save it. so that we can catch up live with everyone in a couple days.